What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. I have Antonio Reese with us. He's with the Reese Realty Group. Antonio, thank you so much for taking some time, out of your day to jump on here and just kind of share your journey into the business.
Thanks so much, John, for reaching out and having us, man. It's an honor and a privilege, man. Really appreciate all the work you're doing out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I always love these types of episodes because, we've been Facebook friends, social media friends for a while, but really we haven't, I don't know if we've ever done a deal together, but we really haven't communicated, much. So when I get the opportunity to interview agents who are in our industry that are crushing it, that I haven't had a chance to connect with, I love it. Not saying I don't love it with other people, but I love it even more because now I get to know someone new, right? So,
Right.
Antonio, where we always start off on the Tell Me More podcast is growing up. I like to go back to the very beginning. You tend to see as I interview other agents that are successful that usually there's something within growing up or early in their career, as far as maybe another business or career that they were doing that greatly impacts their real estate business. So I'm curious for you growing up, what was life like, as a kid in high school years?
Yeah, man. Antonio Reese there, my mom and dad are just straight up hard workers. Dad was a mail carrier. I'm actually a military brat, so I was born in Heidelberg, Germany. A little fun fact.
Wow.
So at 18, I had to, have dual citizenship and kind of claim, obviously being a citizen in the United States. But yeah, man, just was really blessed coming from a strong traditional family. My sister and I, my late sister, but we just, Pops was a mail carrier, worked in manufacturing. I'm originally from St. Louis, so he worked for a company called McDonnell Douglas, which brought him to Columbus back in 1990, and so been here, since 1990. Went to Gahanna Lincoln, so shout out to the Lions. I'm a Gahanna graduate, class of '95, and yeah, man, went straight to the service. So I served in the U.S. Navy for 4 years. Got a chance to serve abroad. Went to over 40 plus countries and so on. So saw a little bit of, I won't say true wartime, but the Bosnia-Croatia conflict back in '98. Got a chance to serve in that, but really just kind of took under. I think military was kind of in our blood because my dad is a 26-year Air Force vet. So
Wow.
just coming in from, hard work, love of country. I was like, all right, man, I need to do it and just get it done. But I had a blast, met some really good partners out there, and then came back in '99 and started. I worked at a warehouse at Alliance Data Systems. And then went to school, graduated with a BS degree at Ohio Dominican,
Okay.
met my wife, and we have two children, and I got a 19-year-old and a 13-year-old, so currently reside in New Albany, and yeah, man, it's been one great ride.
So first, thank you for the service and your family
Sure.
for their service. My
Sure.
brother was in the Marines for 5 years, and his wife was in the Marines as well. So, but I'm curious. So you were born in Germany? When did you come to the United States? How old were you?
Yeah, I think my mom, dad tell the story. I was 2, so we spent a couple years over there in Heidelberg and Hamburg. There's an Air Force base out in Germany, and so I got back over here at 2, and so I think he was then restationed at Fayetteville, North Carolina, and kind of moved around a little bit. And their permanent last duty station was in St. Louis, where he did some reserve time there.
Okay, and then and then how old were you when you came to Columbus?
I was 13.
Okay.
So yeah. So on my Facebook profile, you'll see me claim St. Louis and Columbus at the same time. That's just, got a lot of love for, the Cardinals and my city out there as well. But I love Columbus too. So 614 and 314, a lot of love there for both cities. But yeah,
There you
came
go.
to Columbus at 13.
No, that's awesome. It's one of those things that, you'll being the new kid at school
Yeah,
helps you learn a lot.
yeah,
I'm just curious, how many
yeah.
did you just go to a handful of schools, or did you bounce around before going to St. Louis?
Yeah, I did. I mean, St. Louis was the longest duty. Well, beside Columbus was the longest place that we were prior. But yeah, we go around. But I was really young every 2 years. So, being a military brat is literally every 2 years. Sometimes even your orders could be even shortened up a little bit, even more than that. But yeah, a few different elementary schools. That was a little tough, just trying to, make friends and stuff everywhere we go. But St. Louis at that point was like, okay, all right, I think we're going to be good for a while. And then boom, now we're in Columbus. So, but yeah, took a little bit of, uh, personality wise to obviously try to, be the new kid on the block and understand, culture and where we were at the
Yeah.
time.
No, I'm sure it has played a large impact on your real estate business. I went to three different schools growing up, so
Okay.
for
Okay.
those that don't know what it's like to be the new kid at a new school in a different area, you guys just don't understand. You know?
Yeah, for
So
sure, man.
you go through high school, and then you go into the military. Was that just the next step for you? Was it, I always say, like, I don't want to say, did your parents force you, right? But like, was it the implied next step for you and your family, or was, college an option? Was going
Yeah,
straight to the workforce an option?
yeah. I tell my kids, probably my biggest regret, if I could get in the DeLorean like Back to the Future and go back in the past, that I would have taken my high school career a lot more seriously. I did poorly. I really underachieved. I left a lot out there, and it wasn't like we didn't have the aptitude. It was a lot going on, mentally, culturally, just trying to figure things out, fit in at Gehenna. And so it was a struggle, and my grades really suffered for it. So by the time I got to my senior year, my options were pretty limited, unfortunately, just how poorly I did my freshman junior year. So it was like, okay, well, maybe a fresh start. Let's go into the service. Let's really try to figure out what I want to do, because it was like I'm 17, 18. I didn't do the best in high school. So probably had some opportunities at a junior college first, maybe, and then maybe transfer to a 4 year. But once again, trying to get my mind right and understand really what I wanted to do. So I thought the service would be the best option for me at the time. And my parents were on board with it, knowing the fact that I'm kind of coming from a military family. My dad was like, hey, look, this is probably going to be your best bet, and just let life slow down for you a little bit and just try to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, the last school I went to, I went there starting in ninth grade. So I know exactly, what that feeling is. And it's just different, that age, 13, 14, whatever we were, and going, and you're in a
Yeah.
completely, different state, city. So, it's just
Yeah.
different, navigating those waters. So, so you go into the
Hmm.
military, you serve, a handful of years there. What were kind of the
Hmm.
next couple steps, when you got out?
As far as the service
Just
and the
getting out of the
transition from
service,
service
and
to
then
civilian life.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That was a real tough decision. I'm going to be very honest with you. Probably one of the toughest decisions of my life at 22, because I was blessed and did very well. My father really prepared me for military life. And so I didn't have a lot of the struggles that a lot of people come into as far as like taking orders and instructions. And, it was like, that's just what we do. Right. And so it was just a matter of just kind of shipping up and shaping out. But I did really well, advanced. And so to the decision to reenlist, that was on the table. I had an opportunity to actually even go to an officer candidate type school, which would have been another 6 to 8 year commitment on top of that. And so it was a real tough decision, but I ultimately, man, felt just a real calling to kind of come back home, a real pull, which I didn't know at the time. My soon-to-be wife was here, and so I really believe that was kind of part of it. But it was like, okay, hey, I had a really good run. I know kind of now what I wanted to do, because in the service we spend we have a lot of downtime, and so I knew I wanted to go to college and get married, start a family, and run a business. I just didn't know what that looked like. But I was like, I know if I do transition out, this is the steps that I want to do. I want to get married, go to college, and eventually get into business. That's what I was thinking at 22 years old at the time.
So what were those steps, getting into the real estate business? What were kind of those steps and career choices that you went through?
Yeah. So when I was at Ohio Dominican, so I studied business. So I had a business administration degree, and so I was working at a J.P. Morgan Chase. So I went from a warehouse facility to J.P. Morgan Chase. So we were in private banking and what they call a department called investor accounting. So actually, we were dealing with foreclosures, and so I was like, wow, this is really amazing just to kind of see how that process worked. And our clients at the time at Chase were Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I was really intrigued by that. And I said, wow, it'd be pretty amazing. I wonder if I was able to get into real estate one day and tap into that network, I was like, wow, that'd be pretty cool just to see what that looks like. Because on the banking side, it's totally different. We're just passing loans through and money through and interest through to those guys. But I didn't quite understand on the retail side, on the real estate side, how that worked. And so when I was at Chase, I bought my wife and I bought our first piece of property. It was a 4-family, and that was an amazing experience. We lived in one unit, rented out the other 3, and I was like, yeah, I could see myself, tying in what I'm learning at Chase. And so, it was a pretty big decision to transfer from Chase to work in real estate full time because, man, I had a newborn and she was only 10 months old. I just graduated from college at the time and got my real estate license. So I graduated in 04, got my license in 04. So it was like, wow, this is a big year. But at the time, working at Chase, it was a conflict of interest to hold a real estate license and still work for the bank at the time. And so they pulled me in. It was kind of a crazy. I was working part time there and working part time as a realtor at Remax Town Center at Easton. And like I said, I had a 10-month-old and just trying to, figure it out and, trying to get my feet wet and, keep a base and then trying to keep some money through the home while I try to grow this thing. And, they pulled me in and said, hey, we understand that you're selling real estate. I was like, yeah. And I tried to, kind of play naive and dumb. They said, well, you can't do that. And I said, okay, what are you telling me? And they was like, you don't have to make a decision. You're a great employee here, but you have to make a decision, either give up your license or put them in escrow and you can stay here and I was really torn by that. And so I, told my wife, we prayed about it. I was like, I'm really feeling the leaning towards real estate. So we just by faith, just went out and stepped out there, and yeah, with a 10-month old, they had married just a couple of years. So that was definitely a by faith moment.
That's awesome. So did you have any interest in real estate prior to Chase, like just in general, or was it just there you started kind of seeing how, real estate was working and moving and all of those things coming across the table, coming across the desk? Is that really what piqued the interest, or did you have any interest prior to, and that was kind of the thing that kind of set you over?
Yeah, I was always intrigued on the investment side. My dad kind of, and that's really what kind of got me into real estate, was really more on the investment side. My dad, gave me this, and I can't think of the gentleman's name, but he's kind of like a Warren Buffett type of real estate when I was in the service, and I kind of studied a little bit of his tapes and stuff like that. But it kind of was the seed initially. And then I didn't know, I knew I wanted to get into business, but I just didn't know what business to pursue. And so
Sure.
in studying business administration at Ohio Dominican, I was like, okay, um, maybe I'm thinking about real estate more from an investor's perspective and applying what I've learned in college on that end. And then it was like, okay, well, let's maybe look at the licensing piece. And I think what Chase actually did was is to open up my eyes on the Fannie and Freddie Mac side as far as how interest and things like that is being passed. And so I really kind of gravitated and said, let's get a real estate license and really see how that game plays.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the business side, like going to school for that, did you grow up with like that entrepreneurial spirit, or was it just like, hey, this is probably a degree that will probably serve me at, any stage of life?
Mhm.
Did you have kind of that background growing up?
Yeah, man. My dad, man, was an entrepreneur. My grandfather, would do door to door selling shoes. I found that out at a later time. And my dad, I watched him start a few businesses. And so he would always tell me, man, it was a phrase. He said, man, there's plenty of money on the ground. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so he was always trying to get me hustling. Like, I had a paper route. And it's funny, like I did very poorly in school, but I always had a knack for kind of selling. So I would, it'd be little stuff. My parents
Yeah.
would go to like, Walmart and buy a bulk, of candy and pastries. And I just grab some of them and just sell them, at school, little things like that. Just, it was real small, but he'd be like, all right, you got your paper route business, which, my paper route, if anybody has ever had a paper route, it is a business. I mean, you're collecting, you're knocking on doors, you're collecting money, you're delivering the service through papers. And I mean, it's a hustle because you're getting up really, really early. Your customers and your clients expect their papers to be delivered at a certain time. They want them at the doorstep. And then you got this bill at the end of the month, at the time called the Columbus Dispatch that said, hey, we need our money, and what I collected, I had to make sure that I had enough to pay those guys, and then the extra I would keep. So it was really kind of, introducing me to basic bookkeeping and, keeping my receivables right. So that was a phenomenal job, which I think ultimately, I won't say it was a job, it was a business. And it was a phenomenal business to kind of get my mind right on, keeping my money right, making sure my bills were paid, and then not overspending. Because, at times my parents would bail me out because I overspent. And they'd say, man, would you just please save, because there was a saying, my Columbus dispatch manager, he said something. He said, hey, man, you can keep a lot of your cash and just cash the checks and then pay your, dispatch bill with the checks. So I'd have all this cash on me, first of the month, and I'd take the cash. And there was a big mall in Columbus called Northland Mall at the time, right on Morse Road. Now it's like a state building. And man, I just go out there and buy shoes and clothes, just like any other teenager, just broke after that. Dad would be just on me like, hey, look, you need to save some of your money. Like, this bill's coming. We can't keep bailing you out. And so he said, you're running a business. You're a business owner. And I'm like, I'm a business owner at 14 years old. Like, thought I was just doing what I do. But he was really, getting me to think that way on how to make sure you're paying your bills on time, your payables, and then keeping reserves back. So I think all of that, man, just ultimately kind of stayed with me, and it just got magnified, but he would teach me, hey, if I didn't pay my bill back to even him, he would actually repossess my clothes and shoes. So my dad, man, I mean, he was tough love, but he's like, hey, you owe me money. I've given you a couple of months to pay me back. I'm taking your brand new Jordans. And I'm like, geez, daddy, and we wore the same size, which was crazy. I'm like, dang, man, cut me some slack. I'll get you back. But he was like, son, if you ain't paying your bills in real life, this is what happens. People repossess your stuff. And so even that subliminally, because, I'm a REO foreclosure agent by trade, subliminally, man, that just stayed with me, So yeah, man, it's crazy, those little life lessons, which I thought it was just like, hey, I'm just got a normal paper route, but it was a business.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You know, I'm sure your dad wearing your shoes or something like that probably was like a a subtle reminder, right?
Yeah, it's like, man, because he wear it and model it in front of me too. Starter jackets were big then. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm dating my age. I'm 45, so we were into cross color jeans, Carl Kanais, and Jordans, obviously, starter jackets, and man, I just blow my money on just we call it gear. I'd always try to make sure I was geared up. And he was like, "Hey, you're blowing your money. You're not saving anything." And he just was constantly on me. He said, "Son, you're gonna have to learn the discipline on how to save." And we really didn't get too much on the investment side, but he did break out a Wall Street Journal a couple times, and I didn't know what I was reading. But he was like, "Hey, look, man, look at some of these stocks. So you're buying Nike. Wouldn't it make sense to one day maybe own some shares of Nike?" So he would talk to me like that, at
Yeah.
14, and it was just like, wow, this is, Dad, I just want the Jordans, man, because I want everybody to see that I got the new pair. But he's like, hey, you could wear those, but how about some ownership? And I was like, wow, so now I can appreciate what he
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy, those life lessons, man. I try to obviously teach those to my kids.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's I'm sure, that has greatly impacted, the business on the real estate side and where how you handle things there too. Because, I
Yeah.
got in real estate at 22 right out of college. So,
Okay.
I'm sure we've done deals. You mentioned the REO and foreclosure. That's what I cut my teeth on, working with investors. And
No, yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah. Yeah.
Ryan really, when I joined up with him, had, I think 120 REOs that we were selling off for a small bank.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep.
those were the days. But so you got in,
Hmm.
licensed, you said in '04.
Oh, four. Yeah.
Figuring out, navigating the waters until Chase kind of caught on of what you were doing.
Hmm.
Um, when did you have to make that decision to really, jump into real estate full time and make that your career? What year was that?
Well, it was '04. So,
Okay.
it happened really, really, really fast. I think I got my license and my degree really in the same months, excuse me, in April, and I walked in June. Graduated actually in June when I walked. But yeah, it was really fast. And then Chase, they were on me. Like, so it was, I think I was full time like July of
Okay.
'04. So yeah, they were like, hey, you got to make a decision.
And so dive into that, right? Because you mentioned you just have a child, right? You just graduated, giving up basically, a career with steady income, diving into a career that, 100% commission based. Can you walk through, like, did you have supporters, doubters? Obviously, you have a family that you have to think about.
Yeah.
Can you walk through some of that process? Because I think sometimes when I help new agents get into this business, it's hard getting to the point
Yeah.
of making that leap of faith. Like, you never really
Yeah.
feel truly comfortable doing it. Can you kind of dive into that, supporters, doubters, just your thought process with the family involved and the little one and all that?
Sure. Yeah, man. First, like, the love of my life. I've been married since '01. So, she has been my biggest backbone and support. Works in the medical field, so she was really like an instrumental base really throughout my whole career. Um, it makes things a lot easier. I'll be honest with you, with a supportive spouse. That's huge, right? She believed in me, and then when I wasn't selling, it was like you know she was able to hold it down for us. I think the blessing, man, of being able to purchase a four family and live in that one unit was huge because the pressure of, okay, hey, unlike a traditional mortgage, hey, we got to pay this bill. We had rental income coming in. So, even with our young child, it was like, okay, we could sustain a little while until my business starts to pick up. Because you really, as a new agent, like, especially being brand new, it takes time, to really start to develop and grow. I had been blessed with some good mentors at Remax and currently now, but you have to give yourself the time, to fail and succeed at the same time. Like with any business, the statistics, first 5-7 years are so critical to the infrastructure, but really allowing yourself the time to build that infrastructure, because it is hard, and you want to, for those of us that are married, having an amazing spouse to say, I got you. I can't thank her enough, for what she meant at that time, and even today, because that takes some pressure off. Yeah, you got a 10-month-old, you got a wife to support, a kid to support, and you need deals in your pipeline. You need business, you need transactions, you need to fuel this beast called real estate that eats, marketing and advertising dollars and all of that. So, but yeah, she was my rock and just really allowed us to grow, and it took some time. I mean, I was fascinated by the REO game. I would look at some of the big heavy hitters in the city and just say, wow, how are they doing all these transactions? And I was like, wow. And I would, I chop it up and talk to some of the heavy hitters in the city, say, man, how'd you get these contracts? This is amazing. Because REO was really it was always there, but it was really starting to take off. And I mean, I want to say in '08 through, I want to say 2017, it was a strong part of the market. It really was, right here in Columbus. So, but yeah, we were fortunate enough to really, because it took me 7 years to land our first HUD contract, and 8 to 9 years to land Fannie and Freddie. And so it was, I mean, those are really hard contracts. We had to go down to, 5 Star, Kiss the Babies, the big REO conference in Texas, hobnobbing with REO asset managers and stuff like that. That's a tough niche to crack. But, God's grace, we were able to kind of get through, and, we still have the Freddie contract as of now. But yeah, just been just plugging away, man.
You said something there in the beginning, sacrifice. I talked to a lot of agents getting into this business. You're going to have to decide what sacrifices you're willing to make and not make. And if you're getting into this business, sometimes that sacrifice is family time. Sometimes it's not hanging out with your friends. Sometimes it's not going on that extra vacation that you normally would go on. And sometimes it's making sure that bills are paid, and you got to do what you got to do, because there is no fast cash in this business.
Right.
And putting in, you just laid out how many years it took you to get 3 solid contracts, right, with big players in the REO game,
10 years.
right?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, if you're in this for a career, if you truly want to do this for a career, it doesn't matter if someone wants to buy today, tomorrow, or next year, or 5 years from now. What matters is that I'm the agent in front of them whenever they do it, or whenever they decide to buy or sell, right?
Right.
And that takes a level of sacrifice,
Right. Right.
if you truly want it. So dive into 05, 06, 07, kind of lead me up to current day of your real estate business. What did that trajectory look like? Obviously, you're kind of
Yeah.
focused more on
Yeah.
the foreclosure side of things, and really interested in that, which is completely opposite than most people have thought about real estate. And
Oh yeah.
people getting in today don't even know what the hell we're talking about. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, man. No, it was, yeah, I was blessed, man. Initially, I worked at, Remax Town Center, with a realtor there. Shout out to Mikkel Henderson. I worked on her team initially starting off, and she really just kind of just introduced me to the HUD game. And I was fascinated by, just the prices, number one, on how inexpensive this real estate was. I was like, wow, man, and the equity and the opportunities there. And then work really at Remax from '04 through 2009. And, just really cutting my teeth on, trying to, network, and how do you get in, with some of these banks and so on, because yeah, from '04 through 2009, so it was like it was kind of like the calm before the storm.
yeah,
I went to a conference and they were showing how in 2008, 9, and 10, it was like, man, it was like an economist that had predicted and said, hey, look, these things are going to start resetting. These loans are going to start resetting. They're going to be getting called due. These adjustable rates. It's going to be raining REO. So I was doing like some BPOs for some banks, just trying to get my feet wet, cold calling banks, and landed my first small bank. I want to say that was like '06 or '07, small bank out of California. And then I was just, like I said, it took me 10 years to really land, the GSEs, which were the Fannie and Freddie's of the world and HUDs of the world, 7 years for HUD and then 10 ultimately for Fannie. It was just conference, calling conference. Hey, I'll do broker price opinions for free, signing up on every BPO website that was out there. Some guys would pay me, some guys wouldn't. So that was kind of the niche that I had focused in on right away, and it was REO. Because at the time, that's what I saw. I was looking at, I'll drop the Beckett's of the world. I was loving them, and the Fords, and I was like, wow, they are heavy hitters, and I was like, man, I want to be like them, and so yeah, it just took a long time to really crack that niche, but once we got going, I was kind of in 2010, 11, and 12. It was like really, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I went from at Remax selling like 20, 25 houses a year to selling like, I think, 120 in 2013. So it was like things just doubled. And all of a sudden it was like I'm responsible for property preservation, overseeing renovations, cash for keys, which is an interesting piece, overseeing evictions and things like that, just working with, local, establishing utilities, just paying all their bills. It was like, wow, like this is, and it's kind of funny because this is where I could draw back when I was 14, where my dad would say, you need to have money in this account. Because I remember talking to these REO managers and they said, how much money you got in your account? I'm like, that's personal, but I might have like 20, 30,000 in my account. They said, okay, you're going to need every bit of it. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, oh, this is what you're going to be paying. They just put out a spreadsheet. And I'm like, wow, this is what we're responsible for. And then you got to be responsible for getting your reimbursements back. Because, if you don't get your reimbursements back, that's really on you as the REO broker. So having good tracking systems and things like that. But I gravitated towards that niche early. And then, like I said, our business really just took off during those REO years, really all the way till about 2017 is when we started seeing things really dry up. And, I remember going to a NAREB conference in Cleveland, and they were telling us that this was going to happen, that it was going to dry. You guys had a really good run. And I was like, man, I was kind of like, oh man, I was 80, 90, 120 transactions. Man, this is what I do. And it went from that to I'm down to like 10, and so making that transition from, REO to traditional, it's been real the last 4 years, because it was like, it's kind of like going back to what we started, the fundamentals, is when they didn't know who I was, it was like, you're kind of getting right back to the basics again, the same grind of what you initially focus in on REO. Now you got to flip it to more on a traditional base. So it's been interesting. And I was just telling somebody, I said, I've learned a lot through the process, learned a lot through our career, and just, on the traditional side, it's much different. When you're dealing with asset managers, they just care about, okay, hey, can we move the asset? They're looking at my BPO. They're looking at, hey, this is what you told me that it could sell for. Let's get this thing sold. They have unlimited pockets. I mean, they can make price reductions like that. They say, hey, look, I remember there was a property I had, and my BPO had come in at 115,000. We were priced at 175. I mean, they dropped it just like that. A traditional seller is not going to do that, because that's their equity, but they wanted the asset gone. And I was like, hey, this is what my BPO came in at. It was like, okay, all right, we'll drop it right now. And they did. So, I think just kind of getting your mind around, okay. And, everybody, a good mentor of mine, Don Payne, shout out to him. Vision Realty has been really, really instrumental. He's really the reason why I'm actually a broker today. I give him a ton of credit, me, him, and there's another broker Stefan Douglas and Associates. We work out at Lifetime Fitness every day, and we just talk about real estate, talk about wealth building, all of that. And so those guys have been phenomenal mentors for me. And but yeah, it's just because the game is constantly changing, you know. So it's good to just kind of be, have mentorship, and then just still be able to keep yourself grounded, because even mentally, it's like, wow, we go from appraisal gaps to now we have higher interest rates, and those buyers are now not necessarily wanting to buy because they're fearful of the higher rate. And it's kind of like, okay, hey, we don't have to now bid 50 grand over asking price. You got an opportunity now to get it a little under list price, but you're gonna pay a little bit more money now per month. And but if the market and the interest rates drop, you at least been able to procure your home, and let's try to do it that way. But yeah, the swings have been huge the last couple of years. So
it's one of those things. I got in 2011, so I got the tail end of it. But like I said, I cut my teeth on REOs and all those things because Ryan had a portfolio through First Merit at the time.
Oh yeah.
And one of the I mentioned sacrifices earlier. One of the things that you mentioned was doing the cold calls to asset managers and banks, offering free BPOs, which some people may not even know what a BPO is, right? Like we used to do that stuff all the time too.
Right.
Doing the property management, securing properties. Like it was a grind back then, and we're talking. I tell agents, we're talking 10, 15, 30,000, 40,000. Like REO back then on the high end was probably 60, 65, and you felt like you were doing good.
Right. That's right. You're absolutely right. You're 100% right. Yeah.
This, like I tell agents today, like real estate doesn't stop. It just changes. Back then in 2011, when I got into the business, 2012, it was like, well, how do we know that the market's done, coming down? Why should I buy now? The market may drop another, 10, 15, 30 grand in the next 6 months. Well, we don't know, but, it's just changing that conversation and, bringing really certainty to an uncertain situation or to an uncertain client. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's awesome, that you went through, and built that up. And, one of the things I talk to agents about too is the ability and the willingness to pivot your business, right? Like Ryan got into REOs from the simple fact of he was driving around and noticed that there was all of these properties that weren't secured. So he reached out to the asset manager, said, hey, I took care of these for you, secured these up. Here's pictures. Here you go. And that's how he got the business. That's how he got it. Was just putting in some legwork and doing the dirty work that the person that had that contract just didn't, right? Just dropped the ball, right? But the ability to pivot the business, right? Some people are just stuck in their ways of, nope, here's how I've done it. Here's how I've grown it. I don't want to change. We went from REOs to buyer internet leads, and who knows, might have to change in 5 years when real estate changes.
Right.
So,
Right.
I want to kind of move into the future of where your business is going and what you kind of want to do. With it, what's one thing that you're looking to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Yeah, man. I've got that's a deep question. I've really done some soul searching. And my mentor has challenged me. And it's kind of, I won't say some of it's a little mental, but he's like, hey, look, we got to get you back up to where you were. And, I'm telling you, man, and the transactions were there. He's like, you won't have to do as many transactions, Reese, but let's get you up there, where you need to be. And I was like, full disclosure, I've slacked big time these last 3 to 4 years, not really putting my 100% best effort. And I won't say that I'm not working or anything. I'll just say that I know I left a lot on the table. I could do a lot more, but it's just like, man. And I think kind of coming off that REO high and just trying to, and it's taken me some time to really just wrap my mind around, okay, hey, we're not in that market anymore. And people ask me all the time, man, are those foreclosed? I said, no, not like that, bro. You get a couple here and there, but you're not gonna get a $60,000 asset, unless it's a slab or something with no structure, But yeah, it was, and I tell people all the time that was a phenomenal time, but we're not going back to that. It was just, to me, I think it was for that time. Lending has greatly improved, it's strengthened, and so we've seen those numbers where the default rates are nowhere near where they were. So yeah, we have to pivot. But no, man, he's just holding me accountable as far as really trying to fully fund my retirement. I've worked with an advisor for 17 years, and so just really trying to refund my retirement for 2023 on. I set a retirement date that I'd like to just kind of pivot out, but just work as hard as I possibly can in the next 9 years and give it all I can, give as much knowledge as I can, everything that I've been blessed with, and share that with new agents or people that obviously have interest in getting into the business and share that. But yeah, I'd like to try to fully fund this retirement.
No, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
That's one of the it's one of the conversations that agents don't have, right? No one teaches us that when we get our license. No,
right.
most brokerages don't teach that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love it. Antonio, what's one thing that you're looking to do in the next 5 years? What's a 5-year goal for you?
Like I said, man, my goal is we got about a 9 year window, and we'll work as hard as we possibly can. Like I said, with my wife and I, we've been really blessed, been frugal. When we had good, I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan, so I follow Dave Ramsey a lot, and so Dave was a real estate guy. He was a realtor as well, broker, debt free, and I definitely subscribe to that because it really lines up. When you can have what you're working hard for to come back to you, and then you'll be able to bless a lot of people, and then you'll be able to really create and build wealth through that snowball. It can really prove dividends. I never thought I'd be able to say, hey man, I may be able to retire by 55. That's still never thought I would be able to say that, but it's the possibilities are very real. Yeah, 5 years, man. It'll be probably, I think my oldest is 19, so that puts her about 24. Youngest would be 18. Yeah, man, I'd like to see them both. One's at Ohio State now. Second one, I'd like to see her at Ohio State. Hopefully my oldest will be, looking, possibly herself to get married. Probably, really start focusing in and just really shaping up our retirement goals, just making sure that we're really close to that. Like I said, I've always had that. There's a fire movement on Facebook. Been kind of fascinated by that. I never was one to just kind of subscribe to, I'm gonna just work till I die. I just never believed in that. I was like, man, I put in this work. I like to enjoy the remaining part and just kind of travel, chill out a little bit. But yeah, I see myself 5 years from now really kind of leaning in and saying, okay, hey, this is where our goal is, and any adjustments that need to be made, we'll aim towards that.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey, to me, that comes back to sacrifice too, right? Giving up things now to be able to enjoy it later.
Yep.
And really living and breathing that lifestyle, right? It's not just talking about it, it's living it and breathing it. So
it is, man. It is. I'm in the same house, my wife and I, since '04. So we didn't, when the game was good, we didn't move up, and we're tempted all times, right? We're in amazing houses, and but yeah, man, I always was like, you know what, I'd like to enjoy my latter end and kind of chill and just get back. So no, I might go to school, brother. I might go to school, man, and get a PhD in finance or so on, and may teach a little bit.
No, that's awesome. I got a real deep question for you.
Sure.
This is one that was dropped on me about 2 months ago. Now at this point, I think it's one that we don't get asked a lot. What's a legacy goal for you? Something that you want to hit when you're no longer here?
Yeah, that's a big one. No, man, a big one, but it's something I've been studying, man, for a while. One of the things that my mom and dad always would instill in me and my late sister was hard work. And so my wife and I, we've been real blessed, man. And if I can, just reference the Bible, is just try to leave an inheritance for my kids' kids. So really put some things away, asset wise, that, initially that would make things a lot easier even for them. And so whether it's real estate, whether it's some stocks and equities, things like that, a business that I could, establish and pass down to them and their children is what, to me, makes this worth the while, because it's like we get up every day, we grind, we're calling, we're answering phones, we're servicing our clients. But to me, it has to be a lot deeper than that. It has to be bigger than even us. And so, my wife and I have always thought about others. We're blessed in that regard of, just, really, giving of ourselves. It's never was about us. It's always been about God and what he can use. And we're just literally just mere vessels. We just say, hey, God, we're willing to be used by you. Is there anybody that wants to be blessed? And so, we'll just try to do that. But if we can leave a rich inheritance for our kids' kids, that right there, that's it. I could, stand before God and he says, well done, my servant, my faithful servant. That's it.
I love it.
That's the legacy, man, ultimately that we want to live.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Antonio, I want to be respectful of your time, and I really appreciate you jumping on today.
This is good, man.
But
I love it, man. Yeah, I'm looking at you, man. We didn't talk for like 47 minutes. It feels so, wow. I appreciate you, bro. You're such a natural at just answering questions. It doesn't even feel like that.
No, and it's funny because, before we jumped on, you said this is your first one. I said, don't worry, we'll be good. We'll be good. But
man, I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I always end with this one question. Tell Me More podcast and Major League Success and what I'm passionate about. And I think you'll speak on this too. Just learning a little bit about your story is, I truly believe that the real estate industry is broken from the sense of people go to school, they get their real estate license, and then it just depends on if they go to the right spot or not, on whether or not they're going to have success. You had a mentor, it sounded like, from day one. You have mentors, to this day. I had a mentor from day one of my career that, took me under his wing and said, follow me around. This is what we're going to do. Invested time, invested his own money into me, put me in a position of real estate to succeed. And that's what I'm passionate about, right? Like just changing the way new people get into our business. Because I don't feel like the failure rate has to be 87% by the end of year two. I truly don't believe that has to be the case.
Right.
But this last question is if you could give our audience just one piece of advice that either you wish you had starting out or currently to this day, something that you always tell every single agent that you come across that is, building their business, what would that piece of advice be?
Man, you be hitting me, man, with some heavy ones. Man, and that too is a really, really loaded one, man. Just, really speaking from 18 years. And I had the privilege, I was talking to another young agent. He just got his license. We had met at a networking chapter. I love it. The one thing about real estate is, man, it's so broad, right? I mean, you go commercial, residential, new builds, new construction, condominiums. And I told him, I said, man, I found myself really focusing in on a niche at that time and having a mentor, obviously, that can kind of guide us through. But that niche, if you lined up 10 real estate agents right now and you ask them, hey, why did you want to get into business? And most of us would all kind of sound the same, right? We want to help people. We want to help people build wealth, blah, 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 blah. And that's all great. But I told him, I said, man, the niche to me really meant something because it actually allowed me in a very crowded space of 10,000 to just singularly focus in on this part of the business, right? I mean, I definitely wanted to be an asset to community and help people, but it really helped me narrow down and say, okay, hey, what do you want to do inside of real estate? And so, yeah, if I could just tell folks, man, it's a phenomenal business. Can you focus in on something specifically that can benefit the masses, but something specifically, and then a mentor. That mentorship is critical because you can get discouraged. I mean, I'm 18 years and I get discouraged.
Yep.
If I'm talking to Don Payne, that's been in the business 43 years, my discouragement doesn't sound as bad because it's like he's been through this, right? He's been through interest rates at 15, 20%. So he really puts it in perspective and said, hey, man, I was selling real estate then. I'm like, man, it's 7.5. He's like, but I was doing it in the 80s at this. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it really kind of puts things in perspective and just kind of really brings you back in. I know that's kind of a long-winded question, but that mentor to kind of just stabilize you, kind of jerk your chain, hold you accountable, and really speak that into your life and say, hey, look, it's going to be okay. A true mentor obviously is going to help grow your business. With myself, Stefan Douglas and Vision, we're 3 different brokerages, right? All in the same city. And we're constantly telling each other about different opportunities on ways on how we can grow our business. Technically, are we competitors? Sure. But we love each other. You know what I mean? We're freely giving information that will ultimately help build, each other's business. We got a saying, we did a weight loss challenge this year, and these guys helped me lose some weight. And I wanted to get, under a certain weight. And we just kind of ripped off and duplicate like most people, realtors do. We just said we're stronger together. We got that from Howard Hanna, but we are literally stronger together. If there's something that I can bring to the table or that they can bring to the table to help strengthen my business. And I think that's one thing that you do, bro. Like I've been kind of following you and you really kind of cross brokerage lines and say, hey, look, is there anything that I can do? Like, I mean, that's so hot to be able to say, I got an open call night. Anybody can come. Any brokerage can come. That's huge. That's encouraging the real estate community, because it's like, hey, bro, this is how I did it. This is how I came up. This is where my leads come from. And to be able to freely share that, because, sometimes our industry can be guarded too, where people don't want to speak, and it's like, hey, man, how'd you get it? I'm not telling you anything. You got to go outside of your market just to kind of get information. But I mean, to hear that locally and to get an agent that's freely, like yourself, that's freely able to share. And, the giving principle, I mean, you're giving, you're going to receive. You're giving, you're going to receive. That, that seed's not going, on stony ground. I mean, you're giving great content, great seed to people. And these agents, they need to hear that. Like, man, this is how Jon Harp got it out the mud. This is where, he's with that team and this is what they're doing. This is the process. They need to hear that, the authenticity of like, hey, bro, this stuff is hard, but if you do the work, this could really, really pay off for you. And, you're a result of that. So, yeah, bro. Just people like yourself and just having a mentor to just share. Because like I said, it can be intimidating. People sometimes don't want to talk, but, you just got to find that right mentor to say, hey, I got you.
Yeah. That's, I think one of the things that I learned quickly about this business was the mental side. I think the mental side is a lot harder than the real estate side,
No, man, you're right, man. You're right, man. And I draw on kind of my Navy experience, and my mentor challenges me all the time. Hey, man, you need to make 100 calls or 50 calls. How many calls did you make today? And I'm like, man, I don't want to make no calls, man. I'm tired of but it's the mental of, okay, I know I have to answer to him as accountability partner, but then the mental side is just like, all right, I might get, rejected a little bit, but it's okay. Like,
yeah,
they may hang up on me, they may cuss me out. Don't you ever call me again? But you know what? Just changing the mentality. I had a Navy guy, last story, I had a Navy chief, and we would have to do this crazy watch called the mid watch. And it was from midnight to 3:45 in the morning. basically 4 a.m. And that watch was horrible, man, because we would actually work, from like 6 a.m. till about 4:35, shower up, eat chow. And then we would only have about 4 or 5 hours before we'd have this watch. It was just brutal because your sleep is broken. And it's just a very, very, it's the toughest watch in the military. It's called the mid watch. But he would always tell me, I said, why are you putting me on this? And he would use some expletives, but he said, I'm going to break you. And I'm like, why? Like, I didn't do nothing to you. Like, I'm just seeming recruit Reese, right? Like, I don't, he's like, Reese, I have to break you. And if you keep complaining about it, it's going to get harder. But if you stop complaining about it, it's actually going to get easier. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, I couldn't see my, eyes from the forest, but I'm like, okay. And after about 2, and he did this specifically for about 3 months. And he was staying to watch with me. So that's one thing about being in the military. They're not going to issue out orders for the most part that they wouldn't do with you or do themselves. Yeah. So the leadership was phenomenal. So he was standing there right there with me, and we're just looking at the middle of the ocean, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 a.m, everybody's asleep. And I'm like, gosh, this sucks. But he broke me. And then I want to say about the 2nd month mark, I stopped complaining. And I would literally see him and say, hey, we got the mid-watch, Chief. He said, yep, I'll see you there. And I stopped complaining about it. And actually, it got kind of fun. And I'm like, and so he told me, he says, you know what? I just wanted to break you. I'm never going to give you this watch again. And I just want to see what you had. And I was like, it broke me down. Like, I hated this thing. I was tired. Gosh, I had to work all day. But I draw back on that when it comes to like cold calling sometimes. Nobody sometimes wants to do that, but it's like, hey, if you could just kind of break through that mental barrier, and maybe somebody's going to give you a nod. Somebody will say, hey, look, I do need you to list my house. So that's kind of the mental piece. I agree with you that, even us as agents, and it doesn't matter whether you're 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 18 years, that mental aspect of the game. And I'm full disclosure. Yeah, that's real, but I got to push through this.
And that's why I love having agents on here. It's truly sharing the story. Like, it's not all social media glitz and glamour and sexy. A lot of it is not that, right? It's the behind the scenes and the frustrations and the stress and all of those things that go into it. Which is why I think the industry is broken. Is there's not enough agents coming in to the right situation with the right people that are, and look, I'm not the right fit for a lot of people, right? You're not the right fit for a lot of people that get into the business, and that's okay, right? But it's really figuring out, how can we change the industry to where we get people in and we get them into the right situations that will allow them to grow and really have that mentorship, because all real estate is ripping off and duplicating, right? Like, no one's really inventing anything, new, special. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a contact sport. The more people you talk to about real estate every single day, the more success you're going to have, right? It's that simple when you break it down that way. Now, we like to complicate it and make it more complex than that. But that's us as humans, right? I mean, that's just what it is, right? So, Antonio, I appreciate your time. I know we're up against an hour. For those that are watching,
man, it doesn't even feel like
it. for those that are watching, if you are an agent and you want to connect with Antonio and you love his story and you want to learn more about REOs and BPOs and everything else that he's experienced, his website's at the bottom. If you guys are buying or selling here in Central Ohio and you want to work with him, please reach out to him. Go to his website and get connected with him. But for Antonio, for those that are listening in, can you go ahead and just share the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Yeah. Our website, is John indicated, at realestatecouch.com. Our contact number is 614-271-2233. That's my mobile number. And we're located on Campus View, 200 East Campus View Boulevard. That's Suite 200, lovely city of Worthington, 43235. So, yeah, we're here. And Jon, definitely appreciate you, man. This has been a blast.
No, thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. I'm here to help and serve you any way that I can.
Vice versa, brother. No doubt.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'll talk soon.
Thanks again. Take care, guys. Appreciate you.